Welcome to ACX University. I'm Scott Jacoby, and today I'll be chatting with Paul Stokes from Audiobook Reviewer and Robin Whitten of Audiofile magazine, who are here to help us understand the elements of a well-reviewed audiobook, as well as how things work at their respective publications. Let's meet our panelists. Paul Stokes is a quiet man who shares his passion for books through honest and professional reviews. More frequently than not, you will see Paul listening to books while riding his bike, tending to a huge fruit and vegetable garden, growing bonsai trees, and operating his own online bonsai magazine. His family consists of a wife, 2 cats, and 2 African gray parrots. Paul is joining us live via satellite today after some unexpected weather issues kept him in Wisconsin. Hi, Paul.
Hi there.
To my left is Robin Whitten, the founder and editor of Audiofile, 25 years young and ready for the next challenge ahead. Started in 1992, Audiofile reviews and recommends audiobooks as a multi-platform resource, publishing in print, e-newsletters, the audiofilemagazine.com website, and seasonal programs like Audiobook Sync for teens and audiences. Audiofile also maintains the Talent and Industry Guide, the sourcebook for audiobook professionals. Robin currently serves on the board of directors at the Audio Publishers Association as VP Member of Communications. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. All right, so, Paul, let's start with you. Can you give us a little bit of background on how you became an audiobook fan and how you came to start Audiobook Reviewer?
Sure. My first recollection of an audiobook was with on a road trip with my mom. I believe we were driving to Florida or somewhere. I don't even remember what book it was. I just remember that we were so entranced by the book, we never wanted to get out of the car. And fast forward a few years, I'm a desk jockey. I make websites for a living, and I found that I needed something to occupy my mind while sitting at the desk and, constantly writing code. Mm-hmm. And I remembered this good experience I had listening to audiobook with my mother. So I picked one up and loved it. I was hooked. And then, this was before I realized that libraries also carried audiobooks. Mm-hmm. And I needed to find out where to get more. So I found Audible, joined up with them, and quickly burned through my allotted monthly audiobooks mm-hmm. and needed more. Found that I can listen to anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 audiobooks in a week.
Wow.
At my job, because nobody really likes to talk to me there.
And so how does that passion and that rabid consumption turn into reviews and audiobookreviewer.com?
Yeah, so I had to find out a way to feed my need for more audiobooks, and I discovered that publishers and authors generally will give review copies for free in exchange for a review. Mm-hmm. I thought, this is a great idea. I got to do this. I already make websites. Let's make a website and put reviews up on there and, see if anybody will even read them.
So it sounds like a perfect storm, a nice confluence of events and a good way to turn your audiobook addiction into something a little bit more that led you here today.
Exactly.
And so, Robin, what is your history with audiobooks and how did Audiofile come about?
Well, I have pretty much the same kind of an experience of being a listener, mm-hmm. Driving around where the radio reception was not great, and someone suggested, well, you should take some audiobooks from the library with you. And I was amazed, then started to chat with my local library director about audiobooks in the library and how the performance of an audiobook really made all the difference.
So you were immediately drawn to the performance aspect.
I was.
Interesting.
I was so curious that this voice could take you into a story so immediately and hold you there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this is in 1991,
okay.
And desktop publishing of newsletters was really big. So I thought, I could do that. And my first newsletter was 12 pages.
Okay.
25 reviews.
Wow.
Black and white.
Wow.
And it was a bit, that was the first Audiophile magazine, and it's a bit like a tiger by the tail.
Okay.
Because all the things that have changed since
Right.
the early 90s with
Yeah.
audiobooks.
No longer books on tape, digital downloads,
Yeah.
website instead of a e-newsletter.
No slapping those cassettes on the
Nope.
side
Nope.
of the...
Thank God, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so now that we know a little bit about the background of your two publications, I'd like to get into the process of reviews on your respective sites. A book comes in for review. Robin, how are you deciding whether or not you'll review it? Does every book submitted get reviewed?
Well, we do look at every book that is submitted and consider it for review. We have to have a system to select, and because I think we were trying to figure out, we get about 1,000 books a month.
A month? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Submitted a month.
Wow.
So we have to come down to a reasonable number that we can actually get out to our audiophile reviewers.
And what number is that usually? How many are you reviewing out of that 1,000 a month?
We review about 50 a week, so we review about 200.
Okay.
Audiobooks
That's a pretty good number.
month. Yes.
All right.
But it's hard still to find the 200
Right.
out of the 1,000. So.
And so what is that process? How are you matching up the books with the reviewers?
Well, we do that. We try to select a group of audiobooks that we think are worthy of getting a review. And then, and that cuts down the number that we put forward into sort of our queue for reviewing. And then I match the book selections with a reviewer's interests.
And how many reviewers do you currently have in your stable, if you will?
Audiophile has about 100
Okay.
people with different interests, and we have information about all of their interests, and I find it a great thing to try to match them. So I make suggestions to the reviewer of half a dozen titles, and they can select from those.
I see.
And so they're making the ultimate decision on what to review.
And that seems like an interesting way to hopefully get the book started on the right foot with a reviewer who is likely to be interested in the material and if all else is going well, hopefully get a good review because they're into that genre or whatever made them pick that book.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll get into a little bit later what you said, we whittle the list of 1,000 down to maybe about 200. I'd love to hear a little bit more later about how you do that whittling, what makes a book initially attractive to get a review or not, perhaps, and what our viewers could look out for when submitting. But now let's kick it over to Paul, or should I say let's kick it over to Paul. How does Robin's process compare to yours at Audiobook Reviewer?
It's pretty similar. We have about 10 reviewers for the site. And every audiobook that is submitted, we will look at and determine if it fits in the genres that we prefer to review, because we do not review every genre.
And what are those genres?
Sci-fi, horror, some mystery and thrillers, pretty much anything as long as there's not a huge focus on romance.
Okay.
A few of the reviewers do enjoy that stuff, but generally we do not review those.
Okay.
And then every audiobook that is submitted is put into a queue that all the reviewers can look at and select books that are interesting to them.
And how long, Paul, does that process usually take for you from the time a book is submitted for a review until it's assigned and then hopefully the review comes out?
It varies, but generally I'd say on average it takes about a month for it to be assigned, and then another 2 months before the review actually comes out.
Okay, interesting. And Robin, how does that compare to your process?
Well, it varies a little bit. We try to get advance copies of audiobooks before their on sale date, because that's what we're shooting for, is to try to get the reviews ready just before or very close to when the on sale date is.
Right.
But I think 6 weeks is probably a likely average of time.
From submission to the time the review comes out. And so it sounds like, Paul, you said roughly 2 months from the time it's submitted and then assigned and then the review comes out. So it sounds like you two are fairly close.
Yeah, roughly. I do have books that have been sitting around for a while, and it's just because the reviewers don't find that one all that interesting compared to the rest.
Right. Okay. And that makes sense. And so Robin has said that sometimes she will try to get advanced copies of audiobooks to get that review out a little bit earlier. Has that ever happened with you, Paul? And if not, are you open to that? Somebody sending you the audio of their book before it's released to try to time that release?
Absolutely, open to it. I believe we've done it only a handful of times, generally because the book is produced through ACX, and it's a little hard to get an advance copy. Mm-hmm. But through publishers, the bigger publishers, we've done it before.
Okay. And for our ACX viewers, for our rights holders or producers, if you converse with each other and would like to send that audio in advance to an Audiofile or to an audiobook reviewer, you can download that audio from the ACX website if you're the rights holder, or if you're the producer, you should have that final audio and can, between the two of you, work out submitting it for reviews, maybe get those going by the time the book comes out. So I think we did touch a little. My next question is, how often are you publishing reviews? Robin, you said you do 50 in a week? 50 in a week. Mm-hmm. And Paul, how often and how many are you publishing?
We shoot for at least one review every day. Sometimes that number is 2 during the weekdays. On the weekends, we actually open up the site for what we call guest reviews, mm-hmm. where anybody can submit a review to any book they like, and it'll get published on the site.
Oh, interesting. And when you say, and you mean fans of your site or just the general public, if you will?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, cool. That's a really fun way to work in listener reviews into the process.
Yep.
So, okay, the book has been submitted. The book is matched up with a reviewer. I'm going to go to Robin first here. Once the book is matched up with a reviewer, what is the focus of the review itself? What are they listening for?
So our reviewers are all really focused on the performance mm-hmm. of the audiobook. That's not in isolation, but that's what we're reviewing. That's our focus because, of course, for lots of books, there are going to be reviews in other media of the text mm-hmm. is written.
Right.
But that's what the magic of audiobooks is. That's what we want to review. That's what's special about it. So we want to be giving an idea through our reviews of what a listener can expect.
Interesting. So I'm curious, obviously, not every book is the world's best book ever written. Are there ever cases where a book comes in and the reviewer may not be in love with the text but feel that the audio elevates it, or there's something about the performance that really sends it into that next tier?
Absolutely. We hear that fairly frequently. Sometimes in a series, maybe not a series, but I just read a review coming in the other day. The reviewer was basically thanking the narrators for really making it a much better experience, mm-hmm. Over beyond the story.
Right. Yeah. Beyond the story.
Yeah.
And so, Paul, how does that compare to what's going on at your site? What are your reviewers listening for? What's the focus of the review on your end?
Yeah, very, very similar. Again, we do try to give just a very brief, overall, spoiler-free summary of the plot, just to prove that we actually did listen to the book, and then we focus on the narration and the audio quality itself. And similarly, some narrators are so good that they can single-handedly save, an average book.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's the magic of audio. Paul, you touched on the audio quality. I don't know if you meant recording quality, but I do have a question about that. How important, Paul, and then we'll go to Robin after that, is the recording quality? I know that there's a big focus on the performance. Does a poor production distract from the overall experience? Will a book receive a poorer review, or do you just try to shut that out and only really listen to what's being performed?
Unfortunately, it does come into play. I've listened to more than one audiobook that had a dog barking in the background, or I think there was another one where a phone was ringing, and it does distract from what I like to call the whole audiobook experience, because it kind of brings your imagination out of the whole thing.
Right.
And it depending on how often it happens and how noticeable it is, it could affect the overall review.
And so would that get mentioned in the review, or would that review just be abandoned, or how would that be handled?
Absolutely, it would be mentioned in the review. We've also come across where there's a sentence that is duplicated right after itself. we'll even give the timestamp of when that happened. Just, here it is, it's too bad, but
be prepared for it.
yeah.
And so, Robin, same question to you. Audio quality, how is that factoring into the overall review?
Absolutely. It's essential to get the audio quality as high as possible. And because I think that one of the things that we find, all of the ACX authors and rights holders who are having their books produced are side by side with the fanciest studio productions. And, that's going to make a difference when the reviewer hears extraneous noises, bad edits, low quality, all those things.
Right.
Very important to get it.
Starting with you, Robin, I'd like to touch on your stable of reviewers. Who are your reviewers? Are they listeners? Are they fellow actors or authors? And how might one become a reviewer for your site if they so desired?
Well, one of the reasons that we have so many reviewers is we like lots of different points of view and lots of interests. So we have a fairly good range of reviewers who are, librarians, writers, media. Maybe someone writes for the media, which could be social media also. We have some people who have been involved a little bit with the production of audiobooks, but usually not because there's always a conflict. So, but authors and then we have a lot of really devoted audiobook fans. And they come from, their day job is totally lots of different things, but it's mostly the interest and devotion to audiobooks and interest in the performance and talking about the performance.
Okay, and so are you currently accepting applications, if you will, and how would one submit that?
You can submit again to probably the easiest thing is to editor@audiofilemagazine.com. Just an inquiry about reviewing. We have a criteria package and information, and I like to know a little bit about what your listening experience is, because we like to have people who have listened broadly and deeply.
Right. Yeah. And does social media following, does that play into it? Do they need to be sort of popular? Are you concerned that they'll help share the review and get more eyes on it?
That's always nice, but we try to get onto as many platforms with the reviews as we can.
That makes sense. So. And Paul, same question for you.
Yeah, our reviewers are mostly audiobook fans, other book bloggers, several print book bloggers that want to listen to an audiobook every now and again, review for us. I have a couple of print copy editors, a handful of authors that have audiobooks out there, but they can't review their own book.
Right.
That's the only stipulation.
And so that's who makes up your stable. And you're currently open to additional reviewers, or do you feel you have all you can handle at the moment?
I'm always open to more. Again, there's a form on the site where you can basically, quote unquote, pitch yourself to me and the team to why you think you should be part of the team. And what do you like to listen to? Do you have other reviews out there that we can read over first? So on and so forth.
So I think the big question that is probably on the viewer's mind is, how does one go about submitting a book for review in your publication? I'll start with Robin. What is the process for submitting a review or a book for potential review to Audiophile?
Well, we have a very simple process. You just send us the link to the book on on Audible, on the Audible site. A little bit, we get all the information that we need from that, and we ask that you give a little information and additional information that might convince us that this was particularly useful and would be a great book for us to review and to share with our audiences.
And when you say send us, how would I submit that?
By email to editor@audiofilemagazine.com.
Editor@audiofilemagazine.com.
That's it.
Okay, great. And Paul, over to you. How would I submit my audiobook for your review, and what do you need from me as part of that?
Sure. You would have to go to the website, audiobookreviewer.com, and there we have a web form that the author, publisher, or narrator can fill out with the title information, author, narrator, I believe the release date, the publisher's summary. You can even upload the cover artwork if you want, provide a link to Audible/Amazon or wherever else it may be for sale. And you can also, we also offer a few promotional opportunities. Do you want to have a giveaway with the review? Hopefully spur some interest, stuff like that.
That's a really cool feature. And so you've both mentioned, Robin, you said you can simply visit Audible. Paul, you've said you can go to Audible. Do ACX users need to send you their promo codes that they get when the book goes online so that you can get that review, or do you have accounts with Audible that you use for review purposes? Robin, how does that work?
We do not need a code from the rights holder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
we're
great.
all set.
And Paul?
But we do need a jacket. That's the image that it's submitted to the Audible site. We like to have the jacket image.
I see. So you'd like the users to submit a high quality cover image.
That's right.
Okay. And Paul?
Yes, we need the promo code because we'll download the book directly from Audible, listen to it, and review it on our site as well as Audible.
Okay. Oh, so your reviews are appearing on audible.com under the book's title profile as well?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Great to know. So you touched on cover art, Robin, and it came up in Paul's conversation as well, which leads me to, I'm curious, how much does something like the cover art or the publisher of the book, how much does that matter in terms of your review? Are you giving preferential treatment to a big publisher, or are you totally good with indies? How does that work?
Well, we love indies, but we also have the major publishers and small independents. We're getting books from everyone, and the publisher source may not be the essential element. And of course, a jacket. When we get to jackets, that's just a little, bit of a heads up for someone if they're looking. Just what a jacket does for everyone. It's got a little visual clue. If it looks great, somebody will stop, and that's all you need, just that stop.
So you can judge a book by its cover a little bit, but it's not really factoring heavily into the review.
Not into the review. No, it's much more for the ultimate audience who's reading. We want them to stop and say, oh, look, that looks interesting. And then they'll go in and read the review.
Gotcha. So it's important to have a good-looking, well-put-together cover, but not necessarily specifically for the review purposes.
Not for the review, no.
Gotcha. And so, Paul, same question to you. I guess it's a two-part question, right? How important is the cover art in your opinion? And are you concerned at all with major publishers, indie, small publishers? Can anybody submit for review?
Yeah, anybody can submit. Everybody gets treated the same. As far as cover art is hugely important. Excuse me. If you have a fantastic cover, it shows that whoever is in charge of putting this thing together is willing to put forth the effort and creating a quality product. The standard, black box with just the title words and the author name, probably isn't going to generate nearly as much interest.
And that's very interesting, and I like the point that you're making about it sort of being your calling card or show that you're well put together. It's like if you walk into a room for an interview, you may be the best candidate, but if you show up in a wrinkly shirt and ripped jeans, you're not presenting yourself in the best possible light.
Exactly.
Okay, so continuing to talk about how things are judged and what your thoughts are on different aspects of the production, what are your thoughts on multicast or dual narration versus just a single narrator in the more traditional audiobook format? Paul, I'll stay with you for this one. Multicast, dual narration, yes, no, thoughts?
Love them most of the time. I prefer the ones where it actually feels like the two narrators or the group of narrators are actually in the same room together interacting with one another, as opposed to it being a very cold edit where it's very obvious that they're not really interacting.
I see. Interesting. And what about sound design with audiobooks? Your opinions on sort of the radio drama aspect, sound effects, etc.?
Sound effects are okay. I find that more often than not, they kind of overpower the narrators, and as long as that's kept to a minimum, I have no problem with them.
Okay, so if it's appropriate and that makes sense, I think everybody really wants to get lost in a story, and if you go overboard with the sound design, it can really pull you out of it. Robin, thoughts on sound design and multicast or dual narration?
Right. I think probably the key thing is that however it is cast with multiple narrators or a big sound design, it has to absolutely fit with the book and the story. And it has to be a seamless integration of the multiple voices, the sound. You can't just arbitrarily you have a female character and bring in a female narrator when, and then that's all you, it has to really be thought through. And it's not always as obvious if you have that you can use two narrators or multicast. And the sophistication in the production is far greater when you've got multicast and also with sound design. I think it's important to be very high professional quality and integration with the story.
I totally agree. If you're going to do it, you better do it well, because if people will be able to tell if you don't.
Yeah. Yes.
So, Robin, you brought up casting, which leads perfectly into my next question, which is I'd like to get into some of the things that ACX authors and actors can do as early as the casting process, maybe even before that, to set themselves up for success in reviews and sales. Robin, is there anything an author can do in the writing process? Let's start there. Do you... some authors write for audio. They take out those he said, she said tags. What are your thoughts on that and how it translates into a better audiobook or not?
Well, I think that an author certainly will want to read aloud in some way what they've written and get a concept of how it flows. Now, I think many authors already do that. Some don't, but that's what you're going to hear everything. And one of the things I was thinking about is that repeated words, when you're listening to an audiobook and the author is using the same word more than just a couple times, like it takes you right out of it and you think, he just used that word.
So you think you notice something like that more
it
in an audio version
Right.
than in the text?
Yeah, I think I definitely would. I definitely notice it listening, and I'm not sure that I've ever noticed that in text.
Okay, Paul, thoughts on that? In terms of the writing, anything that sticks out at you that would lead to a good or bad review that authors should think about very early in the process if they're making an audiobook?
Yeah, I agree 100% with Robin. I think the repeated word thing gets me more times than I'd like to admit, because, you're like, they just used that word. Okay, now it's 3 sentences later, there's that word again.
Yeah.
Let's find a different word to mean the same thing. I know there is one.
Get that thesaurus out. And that sounds like a good piece of advice for writing, whether your book ends up being an audiobook or not. Expand your language, give your readers or your listeners something more interesting to experience. So that's the writing. Paul, staying with you, what about the casting? Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of what authors should be paying attention to make sure they get the right voice for their book that ends up in the proper performance?
Yeah, I think they should have an idea of what the voice of the book already is in their mind and try to find a person that closely fits to what they think is correct. Because, if it doesn't sound right to the author, it's probably not going to sound right to anybody else.
Excellent point. And Robin, thoughts on that?
I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting thing. Because I think that authors sometimes have a very preconceived idea of how a voice might sound. But I'm not sure that that's the only way that they could sound, that character could sound. And that the ability of the narrator has to be much broader than being able to do one voice,
right?
And to get one sense. And I think that sometimes if you listen, if in the casting process you just have the voice must sound like this, it could hang you up.
I see. And so maybe the right idea is to just have some knowledge of your book and your world, not have a set in stone must have a voice like this person,
right.
But just to know, okay, well, this character is being driven by this and tends to sound like this, so I'm looking for something in that area.
Right. And I think there's an emotion. I mean, if you're listening for the emotional connection.
Not just this character should sound like Danny DeVito, but this
Right.
character should be able to show love and anger or whatever it is.
Right. And have that connection, that emotional connection to your character. Multiple characters, because they've got to be able to do it for more than just one.
Unless it's a multicast, in which case I guess they don't, right? Something we always tell our ACX authors and actors is go on audible.com and listen to other audiobooks on the site. Every audiobook has a 5-minute sample that you can listen to for free. And we recommend listening to audiobooks in your genre and outside of your genre, as well as reading reviews on Audible and websites like Audiofile and Audiobook Reviewer, and start to learn what listeners like, what reviewers like, what they call out as not liking, which sort of leads into another question. Robin, is there anything else is there something that's a pet peeve in terms of performance for you? Anything that you hear that really turns you off or that our viewers should know to avoid?
I think one of the things that is a little of a peeve for me is the lack of research on pronunciations and place names, because with all the various resources that we have, the narrators can and should be doing all that research. And if the author can assist that by saying, this is because the story is set in the 30s, this is the way certain towns were pronounced, or this is the way certain names were pronounced. And I think that the author can help, but the narrator also has to really be vigilant with their research, because the listeners are going to pick right up on it.
I totally agree. And maybe that's something for the question about early in the process, in the writing process, something authors can do to prepare for their audiobook to be well reviewed is hopefully the author is steeped in whatever they're writing, and so they should have some good idea of how names are pronounced, how places are pronounced, etc. If they can communicate that information to the actor to supplement whatever research the actor needs to do on their own, they can team up to make sure that everything is pronounced correctly and no red flag. You're from Maine. I'm sure if there was a mispronounced small town in Maine that some actor thought nobody's going to ever know that, you would know that and it would bother you.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And Bangor, Maine is one of the most mispronounced.
Is it?
Towns, not a small town, a large town, but there's also this very funny little video about how not to pronounce Bangor, Maine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you can send that to me after the panel, we'll put it on the blog or one of our social media channels, and our viewers can check it out too.
Yes.
Cool. And so, Paul, back over to you. Same question. Any pet peeves or big red flags that pop up in a performance for you?
Pet peeves for me would be background noise, like a barking dog or a ringing phone, or just things that really do not belong in the recording. Also, excessive mouth noises from somebody talking, clicks or pops or smacks or, whatever you want to call them.
Okay, yeah, and that's something that either should be taken care of in in your sound recording, making sure you have a good recording area, or if not, then in the editing stage, if those do end up on your recording. But I guess if you've got a barking dog all over the book, it's a bigger problem than editing, unless the dog is a narrator, in which case I guess that's what you got.
Let's take a quick break for the great debate, where our presenters are tackling your burning questions about audiobook publishing.
Welcome to The Great Debate, where our panelists will argue the hottest topics of today's audiobook industry. On my left is Chris Shula, and on my right is Dara Rosenberg. Each panelist will have a chance to answer for each question, and I'll keep an eye on the clock to make sure nobody takes it too far. Our first topic up for debate today, author read versus professional narration. Chris, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, on a lot of nonfiction work, the author is the great person to be able to narrate that. As an example, Malcolm Gladwell. No one could narrate that better than he could. He's so intrinsically involved in the message that they probably couldn't find a narrator that would have done it exactly like that, with his material. And then also, when it comes to fiction, certain authors like Jeff Lindsay from Dexter do a really good job. Stephen King's also been good, but usually it depends. They need to learn how to perform, learn how to act. If they do that, then they can be good.
Dara, your thoughts?
I think the narrator should do it. I think that we have the acting skills, we put in training, we put in a lot of time to learn how to tell a story, and I believe that we could do the best job at it, and we want to do the best job for you.
Chris, do you want to do the best job for them?
I want to do the best job for me.
Dara?
All about me.
All about me.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of speaking, here's topic number 2. Native speaker versus acting ability. Chris, can you teach me how to talk like a Brit?
Indeed I can, and that's what acting is all about. So through our acting careers, we learn many different accents for both on-camera stuff and VO stuff, maybe even video games. So we can utilize that wide skill set and give a great performance.
Dara?
I think there is nothing more beautiful than listening to a native speaker speak their language, do that accent. It's totally real, and it sounds wonderful that way.
Chris, can you do any accents?
Yes, and you can be real. You don't have to be from that place to have to be from that place, man. It's all about method.
Dara, what place are you from?
I'm from Miami, Florida, and I just talk like this.
All right. Very good. I think our third topic today will really pay off. Royalty share versus per finished hour from the rights holder's perspective. Chris, take it away.
Okay. Well, when it comes to the rights holder, big concern is budgetary concerns. So they want to keep their budgets really low. So when you come in and be able to do a royalty share job, you're able to keep that budget low and actually have a marketing partner, a narrator that hopefully understands marketing pathways, and they can learn together as they get better at it.
Dara, your thoughts?
I think that if you believe your book is a killer and you put all your passion into writing your book, pay a little bit up front or a lot of bit up front, and you will make lots of money and you get to keep all your royalties for years and years to come.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's wrap things up with a lightning round. These questions will be coming fast and furious, so I hope our panelists are ready. Facebook or Twitter? Chris.
Book.
Laptop or desktop? Dara.
Laptop.
Peanut butter or jelly? Chris.
Oh, peanut butter.
Dara, chunky or smooth?
Smooth.
Chris, books on tape versus audiobook?
Ooh, B.O.T.
B-O-T. Dara, pumpkin spice or peppermint?
A pumpkin spice latte.
Question for both of you. Who's playing footsie with me under the table? I'm going to go with both of them. Thanks for joining us for the great debate where our panelists argue the hottest topic in the audiobook industry today. We'll see you next time. Can you tell me more, Robin, what are you specifically listening for in a performance? What makes that good performance? You talked about the emotion of the material. Are you able to put to words what makes that good performance from a narrator in that book?
Well, I can try.
Okay. That's all
But
we
there's
can
a
ask.
little bit of secret sauce here, you know. But I think it is an emotional connection between the narrator and the material because they are presenting the author's story. So they're inside. They need to be inside the head of the author and their intent, and that is something that I can try to articulate it, but as a listener, you hear it. You hear it. So as a reviewer, the reviewers will hear it. If someone is just reading along and saying them, getting the sentences out, having great diction, and totally disconnected from whatever is going on, the audience and the reviewers are going to hear that right away.
Definitely. It almost sounds like the difference between I'm sure actors in this industry know people all the time that have been told, you have a great voice, you should do audiobooks. And some people don't realize that it takes so much more than a great voice. There's an acting ability that's necessary there. And as you said, an emotional connection. It sounds like that's what you're describing, the ability to just sort of read well versus act the material.
Yes, but not overact it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not, because I think that's misconstrued often because I like a subtle performance. But, when a narrator is connected to the author's intent, it's so clear and is so smooth. And oftentimes I think that as a listener, something will knock you out of the space. You'll suddenly be taken out of the story. Now, the author doesn't want that.
Right.
And the narrator doesn't really want that either. I mean, you want to keep your listener right there through the whole thing.
Paul, thoughts on that in terms of what makes a good performance, what you're listening for, thoughts on what Robin said?
Yeah, agree again. We're going to agree a lot, I think.
That's good.
The emotional injection that the narrators can put into the text is, I mean, that's half of the reason I like audiobooks so much, is it's almost like listening to a movie, but better, because I get to make everything else up, except for the storyline. And there's been times when, a particular narrator has brought me to tears just because of the way he inflects the words. There's also been a time where a very favorite narrator of mine didn't do that well on a project, and I called him out in my review saying it just seemed like he didn't really enjoy working on this book, and I found out later that I was absolutely correct. He was not enjoying working on this book, and it showed.
Oh, wow. So that's really interesting. So don't mail it in, basically. If you're an audiobook actor, you have to be on at all times because it's all going on on record, if you will. So let's finish up here with some thoughts on the cream of the crop. We've worked our way through the publications, how to submit, what makes for a good sounding audiobook. I know that Audiofile has the Earphones Awards. Robin, can you tell me more about those? What does that represent? When are those given out? What's the deal with the Earphones Awards?
Okay, so Earphones Awards are given out throughout our year of reviewing. It's not an annual thing. They're given out continuously, and they are it's not a nomination by the actual reviewer of the audiobook, and the criteria is that this is an exceptional audiobook on several different standards of, the match of the voice to the text, the emotional connection, the all the small details about precision of accents and dialogue, everything that you can think of. This is exceptional. It rises above, for that reviewer, it rises above the other things that they have listened to. And these are all experienced listeners. So when something like, wow, that just was amazing, they will nominate it for an Earphones Award when they submit their review. And then our editorial team will check, just listen a little bit, kind of see how it sounds, and listen to the whole thing. So we can't say, oh, no, that wasn't as good as we thought it was. But you can tell a little bit. And then also whether our review is supporting that award, so that if this is exceptional, then the review has to express why, so that the audience knows why this is that special.
And how many of those? So we've gone from 1,000 submissions to 50 a week, so roughly 200 a month. How many of those books are getting an Earphones Award?
Probably about 10%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it really is it's the cream of the crop.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And so you those are just, you said, given out throughout the year, just as the review comes up, and this was phenomenal, and it's expressed as such.
Right.
Okay. Right. And Paul, for the first time this year, you're introducing the Audiobook Reviewer Listener Awards. Can you tell me all about that?
Sure. Really, it's a celebration of indie authors, narrators, and publishers. So the idea was I wanted to create an award of some sort that would highlight these exceptional books. And after talking it out with several people, it has turned into this this giant, almost competition of audiobooks. We originally opened it up to just the genres that ABR reviews, and we had some pushback from the audiobook community, and because of that, we opened it up to almost all genres, and we're getting great feedback. I have award medallions coming out. We just set up a deal to have an actual awards ceremony in person with the Here Now Festival next year, and it's just turning into something much bigger than I could have ever imagined.
Oh, very cool. And so how can when is that? What is the competition sort of deadline for that? And how can people submit their audiobooks for that? Or if I've already submitted for your review, am I included in that?
No, if you've submitted for review only, you're not included. There's a separate form on the site to register for this competition. It's very simple form. You have until December 1st of this year to submit. And then what will happen is the selection committee / quote unquote judges will go through all of the entries and select their favorite 5 or 6 in each genre. And then we'll compile those results and put it out for a popular vote of website visitors. So anyone and everyone that comes to the site can have input in who should win this award.
Very interesting. Cool. So that would be the listener awards part of it.
Yes.
And when will the award ceremony be? When will the winners be announced?
The winners will be announced at the Here Now Audio Festival, June 8th, 2018 in Kansas City, Missouri.
Not Kansas City, Kansas. Kansas City, Missouri. Very important to deliver.
Right. You can get, it is a paid event. You do have to buy admission to attend. You can attend just the awards ceremony for a very small fee, or you can attend the entire weekend-long event if you'd like.
And speaking of fees, is there a fee to submit your audiobook for nomination for an award?
There is. It's $10. We didn't want to do it for free because we didn't want to feel like it was a throwaway thing. And also we found that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to make this happen.
That makes sense. So authors and actors on ACX can visit audiobookraviewer.com and they will find information about submitting for those rewards there, correct?
Yep.
Fantastic. So my final question is, and let's go to Robin first for this one. When you hit play on a new audiobook, what are you hoping for? What's going to put a smile on your face and a stellar review on your site?
Well, I am hoping for the Pied Piper.
What does that mean?
This means that I'm going to hear a voice that I'm going to follow, simply because it's just an amazing storyteller, and whatever the story is, I'm going with that voice.
Whatever the story is, that's interesting. So have you found yourself just falling into, and maybe we touched on this before, a book that you may not have thought you would be into because the voice just carried you along?
Absolutely. If I am entranced immediately by the voice, I'm going to go wherever that voice is taking me. Now, it may be a subject or a story that I didn't expect and hadn't really chosen, but I'm so intrigued, like, what's going to happen next? What comes next? And the voice can do that.
And that's the magic of audio.
And that's it.
And Paul, same question to you. What's putting a smile on your face when you hit that play button?
Yeah, very similar. I'm looking for that true audiobook experience, as I call it. You know, it's the combination of the writing. Did I get hooked right away from the opening line? Did the voice of the narrator make me interested into listening more? And it's a combination of all these things. And if I'm hooked in the first 5 minutes, I'm writing it to the end, even if it's a 50-book series. So
okay,
Oh.
that's good to know. So get out there and start writing those 50-book series. Get a good narrator and submit them to Paul and Robin as well. Well, thank you both, to Robin and to Paul. Who knows where Paul is right now? He's probably over there somewhere. Thanks very much to them both for sitting and talking with me today. I hope you, the viewer, have a much better idea of how to get reviews, what will lead to a good review, and how to have a great ACX production that will lead to a great review that helps you sell your audiobook well. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next time.